Hello, this has turned out to be a very interesting few days. Got an alert on this device warning about 48 hours of flash flooding, and I thought, hold on a minute, this is a forecast, therefore it is like a spell. I'm being presented with a fear script, basically. And I thought, no, not in my world. Not in my world. Not having this. So I just do what I've said many times before. I shall go to the end and I shall bring up that experience of feeling the sun on my arms and on my face. So if we step out into the light, it's exactly what I've got. There's 4 of us here at the present time, and although we didn't confer, I feel that our collective energy was one of, yes, we do need the rain for the land, but not so much that it becomes destructive. So it's taking a middle path. And that's exactly what we got. Now, what was interesting yesterday, was it yesterday or the day before? I think it was the day before. I felt I almost had to shout because the sound of the heavy downpour of rain was equalled by the ringing in the ears. First time I've experienced the volume of the ringing in the ears at that level, but I felt I needed to almost shout to hear my own voice above both the sounds. What I got from that was it would indicate that there is an electrical impulse that has been put into that weather. Not the weather has been created from scratch, but it's been influenced and manipulated. And of course, that is then put out as a forecast to get you to believe in that script of you are going to have destructive weather. Now, why it has sent in recent days, why certain weather has centered on certain places, is not because the collective energy of the people there are any worse than anybody else or any better than anybody else. It's following a script which will tie in with the origin of that place name, probably the coordinates, and the numeric value of the dates will come into play on this. It's all part of a story. But consider that for most of you, that story is external of you. I am going somewhere with this. Today has been very interesting in I've felt that I've not come back fully into the body after a few hours. That sensation of waking up and feeling with it, coming to, as it were. And I thought, okay, there's a reason why this is happening. So I got a request for a tarot card reading, and whereas generally I would shuffle and then cut the cards, the first 2 cards just flew out. And then the 3rd card didn't want to go back into the deck in the shuffling, and I felt like an electrical charge sensation, which to me validates what I've said about something in the art, something in the unseen. And that saying about being open, perhaps it's opening up the senses to a greater range of frequencies. What I'd say has come out of this has been a beautiful experience of proof to self that we do have equal power. We can influence the weather. We may not be able to actually create it from scratch. That may be just down to nature or the nature of this reality. But we can certainly do what is called cloud seeding. The cloud being the mystery, the seeds being the thoughts we create from our imagination that we seed into that cloud that will then come out in the physical reality in a far more conducive way than it did. So it's not opposing, I don't want any rain, I don't want any wet, because it is about finding the balance and appreciating that nature requires the water to live as much as we require the water to live. So why would I want to deprive nature of something it needs? It also has the added benefit of I don't have to go round watering. So that's a win-win with that completely. What I actually wanted to talk about, and I'd like to have made this video a few days ago, but the biggest problem with making videos is when the words won't come. The reason the words won't come is because it is talking about things in the non-physical realm that point between that you come to at death. And let's give you something, a fact here. What is perceived as life, i.e. from birth to death, that is always going to be the outcome. The physicality is finite, so there's no way to stop that. That is always going to come. I pondered the idea of why is there the word fun in the word funeral? What is fun about a funeral? Well, certainly if we look at the material perspective, and we go back to the aftermath of the toilet roll shortage of 2020, and the following year, I seem to recall a radio broadcast of a funeral director saying they look forward to seeing you soon. So yes, there is fun when you're charging an exorbitant fee for a service, something delivered very black and white by the undertakers. Interesting as well, the coffin has 4 pallbearers representing the 4 corners of the earth, because the focus is very much on the loss, on the earthly, on the physicality. That being is no longer with us. That person has died. There is a feeling of loss. Excuse me. But that is from the mortal perspective. The thing what opens up, and that I was shown, that it is a portal, and it works exactly the same way as the pupil of the eye, in that light comes to a single point. Now, if you think about when you observe everything with the physical eyes, everything is external of you, and you are the center of everything around you. Likewise, when that light goes in, it then opens up and does the opposite. This realm is a reflection. So where the fun really is in a funeral is from the perspective of the soul. There was a time in this reality where humanity wasn't developed in the same way it is today with the frontal cortex. There was far more, less, shall we say, intelligence. There was far more spiritual connection and a communication. There wasn't a sense of loss because there was still an awareness to some degree, possibly in sight, certainly in feeling, of that being, that soul, had only separated from the physical body, which is finite, but was still here. It's a high point in the life of the soul. After the point of death, what actually comes? After the separation from the physical body, the etheric body starts to spread out. in that process, it opens up to the astral and every previous life and all the experiences of the previous lives and the life that has just passed are fully laid out. You will see what you have managed to achieve by the choices you've taken, because you'd already decided what you were going to do before you came into a physical body. So it's a completion, it is a celebration. And where in a funeral people will say, I knew this being, and describe that character, and hopefully in a favourable light, that actually strengthens up the will of the soul after it has passed. From the perspective of the non-physical reality, shall we say, it's no different than when you look up at the night sky. You'll have clusters of lights. So that could represent a gathering for a funeral. So when things are being said favourably about the experience, that thing called life of that person, that celebration of life, it lights up like a star, because it is a positive energy. It helps strengthen the journey of that soul after it has left of the physical body until it comes back into another one. Where it is also different, you don't have the constraints of physicality of time and space. This is really difficult to try and put into words, to put into a mortal perspective, but I hope it is at least making sense. We are effectively like inverse Russian dolls. So you have your physical body. Now if you think about this, the most physical part of the physical body is the skeleton. It is totally encased. Likewise, when we look at it in terms of a non-physical realm, your three non-physical bodies are actually on the outside of the physical body. It is expressed and felt and seen as auras, as energy. Some can see the colours. It is pretty much like the depiction of the Gnostic realms of the heavens and then the pleroma. That effectively is the macro to this micro. The expression about seeing the light, well, when we look in this physical reality in daylight, there is only one star, because there is only one playing all the parts, but expressed in its complete opposite as multiple forms, as individualized characters, but it is still the one. But things are mirrored when they pass through the portal, just like when light passes through the eye. It comes to a point and then opens up the other side again. It forms an X or a cross, you could say. So that realm is almost like a complete opposite of this realm. There is also, this came out, and it was beautiful, the timing, that I've just listened to Rudolf Steiner lectures that talk about this very subject. So I've been able to draw on that, which has hopefully helped explain what the purpose or the original purpose of what has become a ritual, a funeral, and why it is fun. Because it comes down to the levels of perception. If you see it from purely the physical mortal side, it will seem like loss. Because that physical being, because you're seeing things in a physical way, that being no longer has a physical body, so they would appear to have gone, and you have lost them, but you haven't. One of the big themes, or one of the big questions that comes out of the subject of flat Earth is, where's the edge? Well, the edge, if we look at it from this point of view, the edge of the universe is the limitations of your imagination. If you choose to put a belief system in place, then that is going to severely limit you, because if you cling to a belief system, anything outside of that belief system you will not accept. You will limit your own universe. It will not expand. You are effectively the creator of your universe, and you create that universe as large as you wish it to be, if you want to see it in physical terms of distance. But of course, that doesn't actually exist. The realm outside of this one is not confined to the same laws of this physical reality. But going back to this whole thing about weather, the hurricane, the hurricane. Just look at the words. You want Cain to look at the character of Cain and the way it's told, and that's what you're sort of wishing to draw towards. Well, you can do the opposite. You have the power within you. What has been beautiful is a good friend of mine, Anthony. The channel was called Nous 22, Nous. I'll put a link in the description. Independently, and there is another channel, I think it was Dr. Dani, have both said about we can calm the weather by our thoughts. You're basically doing the cloud seeding. Because if you all have the thought of calming the weather so it's not destructive, you are putting a collective energy into the interactive field that will respond to that. It doesn't react, it responds. This entire reality external of you is a reflection, and it will respond because it is totally interactive. So this is just another testimony. This is an example which the only way you're going to know this is to prove it to yourself by going through the experience, having the intention, seeing that there is a forecast with a negative script attached to it, and saying, I can do better than that, I can overwrite it. I can input into this reality something far more conducive, far more taking that middle path. Because you have that Luciferic and the Aramanic principle, like is expressed in politics, two wings of the same monster. They are working hand in hand, and yet outside of this everything is in hand. You have two parts. You have the ether, and it's like the atom. You have the solid bit in the middle. That's you. Just like the skeleton is the solid part within you, and it is completely surrounded, but we're talking on an energetic level. You have the ether. This is where Junus comes in. Junus is the hyper ether that separates into the intrinsic, the potential, and the extrinsic, which is in the ether. It's the energy. There is no loss of energy. There is an awful amount of energy, particularly when there is conflict, because when a physical body is separated from soul and spirit early, in, say, times of conflict, where does that etheric energy go? It remains an untapped source. It returns to the ether. It's there to be drawn upon. So you could describe that, as has been described, as the army of light. You can draw upon that as well to strengthen up through this interactive field, through the frequency that you radiate out. You're basically a magnetic being, so you will draw that same energy. This is how things become into the physical. I can't really explain it, because how do I explain ether? I'm relying on 5 external senses which can't detect it, or I'm relying on internal senses which then has to try and translate it into a language of words. That's something very much part of the material. If we take words and language as being part of the intellect, there comes a finite point to it. The words become useless. In the same way that having money and the potential of what you can do with that money will suddenly fall away at the point of death. It loses all value because you're stepping through the portal outside of the material, and material wealth can only be spent in the material realm. It has no value outside of it. It's not something that is evil. That again has been something that has changed in the same way that perception of death has changed into something to be fearful of, something that is negative, that is far from it. It is a huge celebration from the perspective of the infinite, of the soul, the individualized aspect of spirit. So going back to the weather, look what can be done with this. So consider you've got 15 years or so to practice, and put this into practice and calm things down around you. You can't do the entire world because energy just changes form. So the storms may happen elsewhere, but if you can sort of put them into an area like out in the middle of the sea where they will do little damage and not affect nature on the land, shall we say, that you can put it to a better use than having it as something as destructive. You can turn it into something creative, because by not denying the rain, it is providing life for nature. So it creates a win-win by not opposing something, by reacting with a negative force against a negative force. But it says, okay, we'll look at this and what can we change in this to make it far more towards the neutral, far more calm, far more, by injecting some positivity into what's something that is basically a negative story. It's a forecast, it's a spell of kinds. But also consider it is forecast. For is a doorway, so it is allowing something in as well. But you can change it, you can cast it somewhere else where it will do less harm. It's referenced in a way, as you could say, cast your nets on the other side. Because that is also equally true, because what you're doing, you're handing over the power from the conscious mind that has very little input as such when you consider the physical body, the deposit of minerals around the entire body, the functions of every organ, and so on and so on. How much input does the conscious mind even play into that? And yet it runs like an automaton and works perfectly well, providing it's not tinkered with too much, of course. So that in itself shows that we are far more than just this physical being. If anything, we're not quite the physical being, because we don't have the overall control of all these bodily functions of the physical body, and yet we reside in it. We reside in it to experience the physical reality. It is about overcoming fear as much as anything else, transmuting it, becoming a co-creator. And it's like, okay, there is this storm, but I can do something with it, and I can transmute the energy from that storm and put it to a better use that is actually beneficial to far more. Beneficial and being benevolent, be no violent. So it's calming the storm. Right, we're sort of going round in circles now. So I hope that, well, the intention of this is to dispel any perspective of that destructive apocalypse to come by knowing that you have the ability within you to actually transmute the energies. It's a contained field, so any energy in this field doesn't disappear, it just changes form. But you can become the potter of the clay, as it were, and you can remold it and turn it into something far more beautiful, to use that sort of analogy. So I hope that has helped uplift you. That is the intention of this video. And yeah, if anybody wants a tarot card reading, it's a beautiful experience to do. From what I'm able to ascertain about the way the communication is working, I don't really want to go into the point of looking at the mechanics of it, just to have the understanding and appreciation of how it works, to bring it to the level of the gratitude of this present moment, sitting here, feeling the rays of the sun, which has been welcome after the contrast of the last couple of days. But, like I said, nothing destructive has happened here. We've weathered the storm, as it were, and come out of it the other side totally unscathed, and I feel a lot richer for it, as it were. So, as always, unconditional love to you all.